Born in rural Ohio in 1839, John Davison Rockefeller grew up with hardship and instability, which shaped his lifelong obsessions. With strict money management and absolute control. His father was an unreliable, traveling salesman while his mother was disciplined and devout. From this contrast, Rockefeller learned two principles: never waste money and build power through the appearance of reliability. In the 1850s, the United States was still forming its industrial identity. Railroads were expanding and factories appeared in scattered clusters. Everything changed in 1859 when oil burst from a well in Titusville, Pennsylvania. The discovery ignited a rush of investment because kerosene made from refined oil was cheaper and more efficient than coal oil. While many investors chased drilling opportunities, Rockefeller focused on a different insight. The greatest profit was not in pumping crude oil, but in refining it and turning it into a stable, marketable product. In 1863, he entered a small refinery partnership in Cleveland, a city well positioned through lake routes and rail lines. Rockefeller immediately analyzed every detail of the operation. He tracked costs, waste, output, labor efficiency, and transportation with unmatched precision. Most refineries were chaotic and financially weak, while his methods were disciplined and systematic. By 1865, he bought out his partners and took full control. Refining capacity grew as demand for petroleum products rose. Rockefeller reinvested earnings into expansion and efficiency rather than speculation. In 1870, at the age of 31, he founded Standard Oil. His ambition was to deliver oil, products that were consistent, safe, and trustworthy at a time when quality varied wildly and consumers faced constant risk. The promise of a reliable standard became a powerful advantage. Standard Oil soon transformed the Cleveland refinery into a regional industrial hub. Rockefeller studied the financial health of competing refineries and acquired those he could, absorbing their capacity and stabilizing production, while others focused only on short-term gain. Seeing that oil would reshape modern life, Rockefeller asked a defining question: if oil will transform the world, why should I not shape that transformation? Standard Oil was still young, but Rockefeller was already envisioning a system in which the future of industrial America could be directed from a single, coordinated center. In the 1870s, the American oil industry was expanding rapidly, yet remained chaotic. Hundreds of small refineries produced inconsistent output, and prices rose and collapsed. Within weeks in this environment, one man attempted something unprecedented: the centralization of an entire industry, an event later called the Cleveland Massacre. After founding Standard Oil, Rockefeller believed the fragmented industry needed control. Cleveland, a crossroads of railroads and lake routes, was the nerve center of American oil trade. Whoever dominated it controlled the flow of the industry. In 1871, railroad companies proposed a secret agreement known as the South Improvement Company. The deal gave select firms, including Standard Oil, special freight advantages. Railroads would quietly refund Standard Oil a portion of the fees paid by rival companies, giving Rockefeller profit even from his competitors' shipments. This mechanism would push rivals toward failure without their awareness. When the plan leaked, public outrage erupted. Producers protested, and Congress opened an investigation. The agreement was canceled, but the shock left independent. Refiners insecure and afraid, Rockefeller turned that fear into leverage. In 1872, Standard Oil approached Cleveland refineries with disciplined precision. Rockefeller summoned owners and offered a stark choice: join us and your wealth is safe. Refuse, and I begin a price war, and it is only a matter of time before I acquire you. It was not negotiation, but an ultimatum. Standard Oil had unmatched cost. Advantages: it produced its own barrels, operated its own tank cars, built its own storage, and controlled transportation. This vertical integration allowed costs no competitor could match. Within 3 months, 25 of the city's 26 refineries were bought or absorbed in forced partnerships. A dispersed industry fell under one center of control. Rockefeller claimed he sought order, not revenge. But he was executing America's first major horizontal consolidation competition. Vanished, and the market became centralized, a model that would shape future monopolies. With Cleveland secured Standard Oil's market share rose from 4% to 25%. The campaign then moved to other major cities where similar tactics brought more firms under the same system. Each acquisition made Standard Oil more unified and efficient. By the end of this expansion, Rockefeller had rewritten the structure of the American oil trade and transformed the rules of the national economy. The Cleveland Massacre was not brutality but strategy, a demonstration of how a disordered sector could be engineered into a single machine. With this operation, the monopoly era of America began. By the 1880s, the United States was deep in the industrial age, yet its economy remained fragmented. Each state had its own corporate laws, and companies often faced restrictions when crossing state borders as Standard Oil expanded across Cleveland, Pittsburgh, New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. This legal patchwork became a major obstacle. Each refinery technically had to operate as a separate company, creating inefficiency and legal vulnerability. Rockefeller wanted a single unified command for his entire empire. But the laws of the time prohibited what we now know as a holding company to bypass this barrier. He and his lawyers created one of the most influential corporate mechanisms in history, the trust system. In 1882, a confidential document known as the Standard Oil Trust Agreement centralized control of more than 40 affiliated companies. By transferring their shares to a group of trustees, Rockefeller served as head trustee. This structure allowed Standard Oil to operate like a single, multinational entity above state boundaries. A journalist described it as an invisible empire. The trust not only strengthened Standard Oil legally but also psychologically. No one could clearly define where the company began or ended. Even the smallest negotiation carried the weight of a massive unseen machine. Rockefeller's influence extended far beyond what anyone could measure. More importantly, Standard Oil was shaping not just the oil trade but the rules of American government. Rockefeller gained political power through economic dominance without any open confrontation. He did this in two main ways. One, railroad leverage. Because Standard Oil shipped enormous volumes, the railroads depended on it and rarely rejected its demands. This allowed Rockefeller to secure not only discounts, but also special tariffs that quietly pushed out competitors. Two, political influence through experts. Rather than bribing legislators, Rockefeller used expertise. His lawyers and engineers advised government bodies and helped craft laws that subtly protected Standard Oil standards. Written in the name of safety, often required resources only Standard Oil could provide, forcing smaller firms out of the market through regulation. The Standard Oil Trust transformed American corporate structure. Modern giants such as Alphabet, Meta, and Berkshire Hathaway follow a logic first formalized by Rockefeller in 1892, but the rise of this empire generated backlash as journalists and politicians realized that Standard Oil was shaping both markets and laws. Public pressure intensified. Rockefeller withdrew from public life and operated more from the shadows. Yet his influence permeated every major system: law, politics, industry, and finance. All evolved toward the model he created. Rockefeller had not merely built a company, he had engineered the blueprint of modern corporate capitalism. By the early 1900s, public pressure on Standard Oil was intensifying, and Rockefeller understood that he needed a new strategy. He began shifting power into philanthropic structures, using charity not only to improve his image but to reshape entire fields. With the creation of the Rockefeller Foundation in 1913, he moved from industrial leadership to institutional engineering. The foundation operated through centralized management expert committees, data-driven planning, and strict oversight, adapting methods he had used in business to the worlds of science, health, and education. One of the foundation's most influential actions was the transformation of medical education. The Flexner Report of 1910, funded and guided by Rockefeller and Carnegie institutions, called for laboratory-based scientific training linked to university hospitals and exposed the poor quality of many existing medical schools. The recommendations soon became national policy. Many small schools closed and medical education was consolidated in large research universities, supported heavily by Rockefeller funds. This model strengthened scientific medicine but also shifted control to centralized institutions. Foundation experts influenced how laboratories operated, how research was funded, and how public health policy was written. Rockefeller applied the same principle used in Standard Oil to design an end-to-end system. The foundation's reach soon expanded worldwide. In the 1920s, it financed health campaigns across Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Programs against malaria, yellow fever, and other diseases saved many lives, yet often reorganized national health systems according to Rockefeller standards. The rule was simple: those who fund the system shape the system. In education, the foundation, finance projects that promoted centralization expert, administration teacher training, standardized curricula and national data systems. These reforms modernized schools while deepening the long-term influence of private foundations over public institutions. Rockefeller gradually shifted from the public image of a ruthless monopolist to a patron of modern science and public health, but the real achievement was not reputation repair. It was the creation of a new form of power rooted not in refineries and railroads, but in medical schools, laboratories, international agencies, and federal commissions. By professionalizing medicine and education, the foundation also gained influence over their decision-making, structures the boundary between public policy and private. Funding became increasingly blurred, a model later adopted by Ford, Carnegie Gates, and other major foundations. For Rockefeller, the principle of this new era was clear. Real power comes not from controlling what is visible, but from shaping what cannot be seen. In the spring of 1911, the Supreme Court of the United States issued one of the most dramatic rulings in industrial history standard. Oil was declared the largest monopoly ever under American law and ordered to be broken into 34 separate companies. Rockefeller's empire was to be legally dismantled. The real effect was far greater than anyone realized. The breakup did not destroy Rockefeller's wealth. Ironically, it made him the richest man in history because he remained the largest shareholder. In all the new companies, the empire was not gone, it had merely taken a new form. Before the breakup, Standard Oil stock had been stagnant. Political pressure investigations and newspaper attacks had unsettled investors. After the ruling, it became clear that the 34 companies could grow, expand, and compete individually faster than the rigid single entity. As a result, stock prices soared and Rockefeller's fortune doubled. Within a few years, among the new companies were future energy giants. Standard Oil of New Jersey became Esso, then Exxon. Standard Oil of New York became Saucony, then Mobil. Standard Oil of California became Chevron. Standard Oil of Indiana became Amoco. Standard Oil of Ohio became Sohio, then BP. These fragments, like shards from a shattered meteor, became new economic centers. Exxon and Mobil would later merge to form one of the world's largest energy companies. Chevron expanded globally into petroleum, chemicals, and technology. BP entered the North American market with Sohio's legacy. The apparent death of Standard Oil launched a new era in the global energy industry. The breakup also reshaped the oil industry worldwide. These companies influenced 20th century wars, oil crises, Middle East politics, modern automotive and plastics industries they carried forward. Rockefeller's management model: vertical integration, aggressive expansion, financial innovation, and global strategic control even divided the companies, preserved the original governance structures, financial systems, and growth strategies. The company was broken, but the philosophy endured. While the public celebrated the breakup, Rockefeller had reason to smile. He lived to 98, spending his later years walking orchards, reading newspapers, and observing the growth of ExxonMobil, Chevron, and others. They did not bear his name, but carried his DNA. One empire ended, but 34 new principalities arose, increasing a single man's wealth and influence. In history, the 1911 breakup of Standard Oil was in fact the global rebirth of Rockefeller's system. The monopoly was gone, but its shadow remained. And today, traces of that shadow are still visible. In gas stations, chemical plants, pipelines, shareholder reports, and global energy policy. If you found this historical perspective valuable, consider subscribing. For more content,